Hey everyone, Caden Sergeant Steele here, and today I want to talk to you about one of the greatest events I've ever been to, the Warhammer Grand Narrative. This year I'll be recapping the Grand Narrative 2024 and what it meant to me, and the games I played and the experiences I had. So let's dive into it. First, before I get into games played, I want to let you know I've already done a review of the list that I took to the Grand Narrative. Now this was a Crusade event, so we were allowed to build up to 3,000 points worth of a Crusade roster to then pick from to make our armies that we used in games. What I did was essentially broke that down into 3,000 points that could be broken up across 3 different lists. So I had a core list and then 2 optional lists where I could kind of swap out units. And I had about 375 points out of every list that I could swap from. And that was based on one unit that I was going to make the linchpin of whether or not I brought into my games, and that was the Marauder Destroyer. Figured I'd get one good run with it in before maybe it went away. But we'll see what happens. We never know what's on the horizon and what's coming with our codexes. So I brought, of course, my Cadians and used that for the entire event because, well, I'm Cadian Sergeant Steele. That's just what I do. The other thing I did is I journaled all of my games. So I'll be giving you a recap of my games and showing you some photos of those games as well. I had a phenomenal time at that and really enjoyed it. What I don't have a lot of pictures of or a lot of video of will be the kind of things that happened in between the games. I recorded a few of the narrative sessions where they came out in their cosplay and they role-played their characters to advance the story, and those were super fun, and I'll share several of those clips throughout the video. But I don't have a whole lot of that, so it'll mostly be my face talking during that part. But let's go into it and let's talk about the event. So first, I traveled down. It was in Atlanta, Georgia, and I live in West Virginia. And since we don't have a major city, I'm just south of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So my friends Jerry, Steve, and I got in a car, loaded it up the night before to the ceiling and to the back, full of all of our stuff. And because I had to take extra things because I'm a lot, so I had my cosplay and 3 bags for my army because I play a horde army, right? And we packed up all their stuff too. We drive on down to Georgia. And we get to the event center. We get checked into our hotel. We had a great room. It's a wonderful convention center. It's also where they do Dragon Con currently. And that's a very popular event venue there at the Hyatt in downtown Atlanta. So we get there, get checked in, and then we go immediately wait downstairs. I had gotten the time wrong on check-in, so we had to wait around for a couple hours. But that was okay, because there were so many people already in cosplay. I was not. And they're waiting in excitement and just anticipating getting registered. The event staff, some of them were already in cosplay and already in character, giving us directions and orders of what to do so that they could register us efficiently. When you get registered, so 2 hours later, once that got started, what they would do would hand you a tarot card. These tarot cards are event specific. I thought they were going to continue using the same set from the prior years or prior events, and I was wrong. They print a new set for each event. I was not able to get a full set, which is a little bit disappointing. I was hoping to barter and trade and get that, and I was unable to do so. But I did get my tarot card, and so did everybody else. And how it works is you have a team. In each of your team members, you should each have a different tarot card. Say if there's 16 team members, there's 16 tarot cards. Then when your team gets paired against another team, you face off against your opponent with the same tarot card. It's a very easy pairing system. You don't have to worry about table numbers or anything like that. Then if something kind of goes sideways, like somebody doesn't show up or this and that, it's very easy then for what we call the Vox Localums. These were the staff members also in cosplay and character assigned to each room to then reassign you based on your tarot card so that you had an opponent and you got a game and you had fun. So really cool system. And of course, when we were checking in, the staff was giving us a hard time. There was a Sister of Battle. There was one of the characters was with the chaos side and in dark robes, and he has a bit of a tragic story later on, and other characters there kind of getting us started. Simultaneously, while this is all happening though, and we're getting checked in, the Warhammer World Champions Tournament is happening in the hall right next to us. So we did get to stop in. I get to see my good friend TJ Lanigan, who was actually one of my first opponents ever at a RTT here in Morgantown, West Virginia. And so I got to see him and see how he was doing in the event, and several other folks that I knew. It was really wonderful. So that's happening next door. We're getting checked in for the narrative event. We're being really rowdy. And then we go to our first briefing. And so they do this two ways. And so I want to explain that because it's a little bit overwhelming sometimes when everybody's in character and in cosplay all the time. I won't lie, last year was my first year. And while I was there, it was a bit overwhelming for everybody to be in character 100% of the time, because then I was like, well, wait, how do I score this? How do I put this in? And the character's talking in character, and I'm like, kind of getting confused, and it's a little bit overwhelming. And I'm just like, well, I guess I got it then, or maybe I didn't. And he's like, well, I guess you'll find out. And they put your scores in, and I didn't really know what was going on. So this year, they made a change, as they did all the briefings or interactions with the characters. And that was Vermilion. If they said the word Vermilion, that was they're breaking character and we're going to talk to you in normal speech. And that was a great thing. I'm so glad they added that. And I think that helped a lot of people not feel overwhelmed. Or if they weren't comfortable role playing, then they could kind of get around that and be able to just interact with the staff normally. So Zach, who was managing most of this and the coordination for the event and so forth, came out and started out the briefing in Vermilion and to tell us what to expect and what was going on.
Sandras, hello, how are we? That is distinctly less energy than last night. You guys have had coffee? No, I'm tired too, but I've had coffee this morning. Oh, Vermilion, recap. There we go. Good, in zone. Got it. What's up?
Recap.
Yeah. All right, so you guys are having a good time. We're ready for day 2. All right, fantastic. We have a couple of other special surprises for you guys today. You're going to be hunting some very important people in some of your games, and that will have a big impact on how things go. All right, we good? We ready?
Yeah.
All right, well, let's turn that Vermilion switch off.
And then we got introduced to the Lords of War, the lead characters for each of the 3 alliances that we were broken into. So there was Imperium, there was Chaos, and there were the Interlopers, essentially Xenos. Now, for the most part, that's how people were broken up also. But if you could justify why your army was maybe paired with a different alliance, like there were Astral Militarum players in the Chaos Alliance because they were playing Traitor Guard. There were a couple Space Marine chapters, I think, in the Interlopers and so forth, because they were supporting a war boss or something in order to gain a relic. So they weren't necessarily fighting against the Imperium. They were just on their own mission. And all kinds of cool things like that happening at the event where players were able to kind of choose their story, choose their narrative. So then we get introduced to the Lords of War, and they were just phenomenal. We had a rogue trader who was leading the Imperium. We had a war boss who was leading the Interlopers, and we had a word bearer's kind of follower who was leading Chaos. And then they also had the Vox Localums, which were the supporting characters in and around them that usually managed one of the rooms that we'd be playing in. So we get introduced, and that introduces us to the story, and everyone was just, the cosplay was just phenomenal from these staff members. I mean, absolutely mind-boggling. The quality of the cosplay. It was phenomenal last year too, and they somehow upped their game this year, and which just blew my mind. Especially Zoggett and the Psychomech war boss were probably, I think, everybody's favorite cosplay for the Lords of War. Although the others were also fantastic. So no shade to the Rogue Trader or the Chaos Leader. They also had really great cosplays and really great props and everything too. So we get introduced to that, and this is all taking place there at the Great Gun, and the planet it's on and the subsector it's in. And so we're playing through that story, and it's currently the Hive Storm setting, right, for Kill Team. We've also had some stuff previously released by Games Workshop around this area and its narrative. But this event finalized and kind of told that story in greater detail. It was really, really interesting. Now, I won't spoil anything too much. I don't believe Games Workshop has done their full recap yet, or maybe it is there. They do have a page on the website, I'll link below, where you can go and see these photos and see some of the stories and stuff and some of the updates as the grand narrative unfolded. So that's the setting, and that's where we're at. We're fighting at the Great Gun area, and we're fighting over multiple planets in the sector, by the way. And that was one of the things they briefed us on, was how we would then in Discord be assigned our planet. And then from there, well, you have your tarot card. So you would just go find the table that has the tarot card. So kind of like a table number system. And then your opponent would also find that same table, and you'd be paired up against each other. There was some minor confusion around this because oftentimes when you got assigned to a planet, aka a room, and they were all themed, and then there were usually 2 teams from each side in the room. And so sometimes, but we found out we weren't supposed to be swapping teams. So it was like these 2 teams were supposed to be over here and these 2 teams over here. And sometimes we intermingled. And so there was some logistical confusion around that, but it got sorted out rather quickly. But once you then got into the rooms and got assigned, as they were explaining to us, each place was themed. And there was usually something special about it. Like my first planet I got assigned to was this desert planet. And we go in there and the lights are really, really dim. And that's because it's nighttime and we're fighting, you know, at the break of dawn. And so they kind of created an ambiance with that. And it was really well done. Some rooms were, the temperature was slightly warmer or slightly lower. A couple by accident because of the issues at the convention center and the HVAC system, I guess. So that was kind of comical. And then each of the rooms also had themed terrain and gaming mats and so forth. Now they did simplify one thing this year, and I appreciated that, and they briefed us on it. So when we also got to our rooms and we got assigned to those tables, we were given our missions then. They were there already at the tables on basically 8.5 by 11, you know, letter-sized, A-sized sheets of paper. And that was really cool. So we get there and there were extra copies so you and your opponent could keep one. And everyone was playing the same mission every round, regardless of planet or faction or anything else. For the most part, there were a couple of catches to that. So that was really cool and a really great way to do it. I did bring them all back with me. They're also all available for download on the website link that I just mentioned a moment ago, and I'm going to include in the video description below. So you can go there and download those as PDFs and use those. There was only one typo that I found, one significant typo in the whole thing, and it was mission 3. And there was just a thing about how to score the objectives, and something didn't make sense. And you just had to flip it from your objective to your opponent's objective, and then it made sense, and everything was fine. So they did a great job crafting those missions and playing with them. They also worked on one another. So what was really cool was there was even a set of missions where when you finished them, you had to leave the objective markers wherever they were. And then the next people who got assigned that battlefield had to play wherever you left the objective markers. So that was really neat. And I'm sorry to whoever got the table I was on, because we couldn't find our objective markers. So we used my personal collection that I had with me. So of course I picked them up and took them with me and didn't realize they were going to be doing that. Oops. My bad. So now we get into kind of like the actual event and the games played. But I want to mention something. So this was a Crusade event, and they did have someone set up Administratum, you know, by Goonhammer, where you can input your army and track all your updates, your experience points, everything. I love Administratum. I'm going to be using it for when I run my event at Adepticon in 2025 for my players to be able to use, because I think it really makes doing Crusade much easier. But I'm going to go ahead and tell you all now, one of the issues I had for me is I just prioritized something a little bit different while I was there. And I got to be honest with you, I was more worried about socializing than I was necessarily like upgrading my army and getting cool buffs and benefits and like being able to beat down my opponents with those benefits. So I was mostly focused on just meeting people and talking to them. And I had a really phenomenal time doing that. I saw so many folks I already knew, especially I just want to give shout out to Justin. Super exciting to see him again. And in his phenomenal Coronate Cultist cosplay. So good. And so many other folks in phenomenal cosplay outfits. One of the other folks I was also excited to see again, I actually got to see 2 folks, Kevin and Dennis from the Preferred Enemies podcast. I got to see both of them. They had amazing cosplay, especially Kevin in his Fallen to Corn Tau cosplay, which his army's also themed that way, and it's one of the coolest custom armies I've ever seen. So awesome. And so got photos with Kevin. I didn't get photos with Dennis though. I don't. We were almost paired up in a game, and then so I thought I was just going to naturally get a photo when the game ended, and then we didn't get the chance afterwards. So my fault, and I missed out on that, and that was a bummer. But we had a great time. So also my teammates, a lot of them, most of us were guard players, and most of us cosplayed, and that was really cool. We had so many phenomenal cosplay outfits among our team, and I loved really what I feel is our team champion was in a red Kazarkin cosplay and had this beautiful red Cadian army. Oh, it was so good with these teal stripes and accent color kind of mixed in on the models. Just really, really good, and I greatly enjoyed that. So that was really cool. And some of my teammates, and I still got to get used to this. I guess, I'm a content creator, and so folks know me, and it was very, very, what's the word I'm looking for here? It was almost surreal, very humbling, very complimentary also for folks to say, hey, you inspired me to paint and build my army. And then they're on my team, or I'm seeing them at the event. I'm looking at their beautiful armies that they've painted up. And I only even got on social media here to begin with because of Cadian Shock blog and folks like him inspiring me. And then Bright. And then so I wanted to just also be inspired. So I got on social media, and now I'm inspiring other people. And so it means a lot. And I got to meet a lot of those people. So I spent most of my time socializing. I was there for the community, and I was there to build community and make new friends. And I think I really did that this year. A lot of you have been messaging me since the event and asking me about army stuff or painting or cosplaying together next year and so forth. And I'm very excited about that, and I'm looking forward to it. So let's dive in to the actual games played. So I'm glad you've stuck with me in the video this far. And but let's actually talk about the games I played. So I do have, and I just want to mention this, my journal. This is from 8th edition when they launched it, and I'm almost done. And I'm very sad about that. So I actually want to ask you all a question. If you know of somebody who makes gaming journals for Warhammer, where I could buy one, I would really appreciate it if you could let me know, because I love journaling my games. And I have every game since December of 2017 in this journal. And it's almost done. It's 2024, so it served me quite a while. And I'm very happy to have it. And this was an official GW one. They made and sold this. I actually bought this from the shop in Pittsburgh. And but it's almost done. So I did document every game I played while I was there. It's also documented in Administratum in some ways. So let's get started. My first game was against Taylor and their phenomenal Necron army. The thing I loved about this army was understanding the lore to it, and it was very obvious. So this was a flayed virus-infected Necron army. Everything was covered in gory, nasty flesh. They were trying to make themselves living again. And everything, every vehicle, every infantry unit, and of course their flayed ones are covered that way. So it's a really cool army. We got deployed to a desert world, and we had this great mission. It was called Linebreaker Offensive, and we basically had to get in our units into our opponent's deployment zone. And I knew I was going to have a hard time with that. Up against Necrons, they don't die easily. And I'm guard, I can move fast, right? Especially with my vehicles, I had transports, but I still knew it was going to be a challenge. And so I did the best I could with it, and we really pushed against each other and got in there, and it was really duking it out. And it was a great first game. So we did that, and we had this big hill in the middle of the table, and we had some industrial terrain around the perimeter, and we dived into it, and immediately, I think with that, I think I went first, if I remember correctly, or no, I think I went second. And either way, immediately both our armies went to the middle of the table, and we were duking it out and just shooting each other up. And I did kill a couple units of Necrons early game, but but it would not prove to help me win in the end. So, unfortunately, I do end up losing this match, but not for some epic moments within the game. So I blew up a lot of the destroyers and the big vehicles and stuff, except for the Doom Arc. I wasn't able to, Doomsday Arc or whatever it's called. I wasn't able to take it out. But I also learned a lesson very early on with this. So I wanted to take flyers just because everyone says they're bad. And so I wanted to use them just to prove that I think they're not terrible. They're actually just very middle of the road, right? And I think I did that, and we'll recap that in the end. So I brought, in this match, my Lightning and my Thunderbolt, and I brought them on the table turn 2, and that was supposed to be a counter punch. I whiffed pretty hard turn 2 in my shooting, but then the other thing that happened in turn 3, I went to move them, and my opponent had accidentally moved blocked me. Didn't even mean to do it, and so I had to actually fly one of my flyers off the table. And I think that was the Lightning. I had nowhere to put it, so only the Thunderbolt remained, and I had to bring the Lightning in turn 4, because you can fly off the table and then fly back on, and that's what I did. While this is happening, and because the Firepower didn't work out the way I wanted, I do end up losing my Lehman Russ Demolisher and so forth. But in the middle of all this, like around turns 2 to 4, we get a fragmentation order. For those unfamiliar with that, that's a real military term. And basically that means it's like your orders change during your mission. Like you're already deployed, you're on the battlefield, and you thought you were supposed to be doing A, and then suddenly they tell you, hey, actually, we need you to go do B now because the situation's changed. And the fragmentation order we received, which was on a separate handout, they walked around and handed us out, was that we had to extract. We had to get units off the table. And that was really cool. And there's a benefit to it, too. It was called Overwatch. And basically, when we extracted a unit off the table, Overwatch took effect, and not like the stratagem. It was where you then picked an opponent's unit anywhere on the table, and they got -1 to hit until the start of your next turn. Really phenomenal. So I immediately started extracting units, including my Warlord, who had been jeopardized substantially by my opponent's Necron army, who had overwhelmed my right flank. Then simultaneously, I overwhelmed their left flank and wrapped in, and basically we just did this huge thing where Taylor and I just switched our armies this way. Super fun game. Taylor also had this really cool kind of like light cosplay where he had patches of Flash as a cape. And so there's a photo of us together after the match. We had a great time, and it was really good. So the final score for that match was 45 to the Cadians, 60 to the Necrons. So I did lose, but not by much, just 15 points. So it was a decently close game. Next game, I am up against Troy, and this is one of the hardest lists I faced while at the Grand Narrative. Troy was another veteran, a lot of veterans in the Warhammer community. So I got to face off against him. We got to talk a little bit about our military experience and so forth. We actually almost had the same MOS. I don't think we got to talk about that while we were there. MOS is your job classification. And so we face off, and he had 3 Norn emissaries, 3 Norn assimilators, and I think 3 or 4 kind of lone operative type characters from the Tyranids. So, woof, 3 really big monsters and so forth. So the list I had here was, once again, my standard list. I brought the Lightning and the Thunderbolt, my Rogaldorn, Lehman Russ Demolisher, I think. Or no, maybe not that. And then and so instead I put in the Armored Sentinels and the Scout Sentinels and the Basilisk and the Field Ordnance Battery and all my infantry I had. And we're playing on an industrial world. And the mission was contested seizure. So we had to basically do an action to set an objective, and then we had to hold and capture that objective, and that's how we scored it. And so he wasn't setting any objectives early game. Obviously not. With only like 9 or 10 models on the table, he was focused on coming in and murdering me. So I deployed very conservatively, much far back into my deployment zone, and made sure I was out of a turn 1 charge range. Like guaranteed. I wanted no way for him to be able to tag me. So I get first turn, I go to shoot, and I completely whiff. I just do a little bit of damage to 1 Norn, and that was it. So he moves up, but can't get me. So he kind of had a lackluster turn 1 as well. My turn 2, I knew there was no way I could stay out of a charge at that point. So what I did is I chose to feed him units from my army. So I gave up Sentinels, I gave up Infantry, I even gave up my Rogel Dorn at a point because I knew it'd be enough to kind of hold him there while I tried to score the objectives on the table, right? My Infantry would branch out, place objectives, and then score those. So I was working very hard to do that. So then, of course, his turn 2, he gets into me. But luckily, before that happened, I did start to took down 1 Norn, and I started to really start to do some damage to his army. He was in range of my Melta-Guns, the artillery was firing in, I was finally starting to plink away some wounds. So by turn 3, we're completely enveloped in the melee. I'm trying to take out some of his lone operative characters and trying to push him out a little bit, but I start losing units. I lose the Armored Sentinels, and I nearly lose the Rogel Dorn in turn 3. I do lose it by turn 4, though, and so I'm really starting to take some hurt. What I did was, and I resurrected the Armored Sentinels. So they go down and to fighting a Norn, as they would, and then so I resurrect them. And then in turn 3, so this must have been turn 2 or 3, or maybe it was, it must have been 3 because I do a cheeky thing. So they died in turn 2, and then in turn 3, I bring them back. And what I do is I bring in a Scout Sentinel I still had in Strategic Reserves, and those Armored Sentinels back in behind his lines, so behind his lone operative characters. So now there's nothing to protect those characters. One was a Neuro Tyrant. So I bring them in behind, I shift my models over in movement, or, prior to movement. And no, I do bring him in turn 3, but I'm not able to get into position quite yet. He still was hidden cheekily, and I couldn't quite get to him. Then turn 4, I move, and he wasn't going to go backwards. So Troy decided to keep moving forward as he should have. And so that left me room to maneuver around, and I did. I moved the Armored Sentinels and Scout Sentinel into place. I took out his Neuro Tyrant and captured his backfield objective that he had set with that character. And then I try to take him off another objective, and I am successful, but he still has enough units remaining. He can move back onto it and score it. So it was a very back and forth game. We both had some clever movements. We both had some clever things that we were doing. And my all-comers list ended up being much tougher for him to chew through than he was expecting. And so what's really exciting about this game is the final score was 30-30. And so we tied in that 4th round and shook hands, and it was just a really wonderful game and a great experience. So kudos to Troy and having a great game with me. It was really fun, and now I know even with an all-comers list, I can still fight a bunch of giant monsters. So that's the end of day 1. Then we go back, we get another briefing from the GW staff, and there was always a midday briefing and an end of day briefing to update you on who was winning and what was happening in the story. Nobody cared about points. Zach, who was managing the event, never briefed us on the points. None of us really cared. We were there for the story. And so we do that, and each time we're also briefed by the Lords of War, who are the characters for the event. And so it was very fun doing that. So day 2. We do 2 games each day. Day 2, I am up against Matt, and we are on a just really cool another industrial table. And so we are on another industrial world in this cool kind of gray landscape, or it's brown kind of tan landscape. And this is where I thought I was going to get paired up against Dennis from Preferred Enemies. He was on the table next to me, but then he didn't have an opponent. He got reassigned to another table elsewhere in the hall. But Matt and I got to play. Matt had a really cool Votan cosplay. Had a beautiful Votan army. I loved the colors he had on it. The purple and the golds and everything just looked really awesome. So we get paired up in this one. I look at his list, and he doesn't have any vehicles. It's all infantry models. So I decided to swap out the Lightning and my Armored Sentinels so I could bring in the Marauder Destroyer finally. So bring in my big Titanic flyer and fly it around the table and have a lot of fun with it that way. Or wait, I took the Thunderbolt and the Armored Sentinels out, put in the Marauder, kept the Lightning. Because I painted the Lightning just for this event and wanted to use it. So the deployment was wild. It was for mission 3, and this is where the first time we had a different set of mission cards. So we were playing Lightning Strike, but there was Lightning Strike A and Lightning Strike B. He had Lightning Strike B, so he scored and had slightly different rules. I had Lightning Strike A as the mission. So we were kind of not seeing each other's rules. I guess we could have shared them. We chose not to. And we're duking it out. He had to deploy from one corner to the other corner and basically like a 12, 16-inch strip down the middle of the table. Then I got both of the opposing corners. So I get 2 deployment zones and could pincer inward. It should have been, and for a lot of folks playing this game, that was devastating to be pincered in from both sides and for the opponents to come in at you. So I believe I had gotten first turn in this game. I think it was maybe even set up where that automatically happened. Or no, I think we still rolled off for it. So we roll off, or whatever happened, and then I move into towards the middle table. But I wanted to be a little bit conservative. I grabbed a couple objectives early on, especially with my infantry. I gave move, move, move. I shifted up, grabbed objectives. I have my Cadians, so I get a sticky objective. That's really important. So I get up there and begin grabbing those right on the middle. All the objectives were either in no man's land or his deployment zone. There were none in mine. So I had to move out, and I had to get there to be able to seize those. And that was the whole point of the Lightning Strike, right? I'm coming in from both sides and just grabbing these things and taking them from Matt. And but I shoot, and it's I didn't have a whole lot of line of sight. Matt deployed very clever and was able to hide a lot of his units, and he had a lot of those Hearthguard units with the heavy armor, basically their Terminator Votan, and they were really hard to shift, and I didn't kill any of the units turn 1. So I was able to whittle them down and wound them a little bit, but I was not able to take them out. And because of that, Matt was able to counterpunch really, really well. So he came back at me, but he wasn't able to shift me off any of the objectives, but he was able to come in and start threatening me, right? So then I pushed back again, and we just kind of do this right there in the no man's land for almost 3 turns of this kind of push and pull and fighting each other. And eventually, by late game, I had started to finally really thin out his units, but he'd done the same to me by this point. He had a lot of units in Deep Strike. And when he brought them down, they had Volkite weapons and anti-infantry weapons. And that's mostly what I had left on the table. He had worked to take out my armor, my Scout Sentinels and my Rogaldorn and other stuff kind of early on. And a couple key infantry units. And then he worked towards taking out my infantry in the late game. And he was highly effective at doing so. I even lost my Marauder Destroyer and my Lightning in turn 2 and 3. To Volkite weapons mostly. He had missile launchers too. But I learned how deadly Votan can really get, even when they don't have their vehicles and they're just infantry. They're extremely deadly and very resilient. So I did have to kind of brace and deal with that. Losing my aircraft was actually pretty devastating because that was where a lot of my anti-infantry fire was going to come from, was that Marauder Destroyer, especially anti-elite with the autocannons and assault cannons. I expected to just rake through his Votan models, and I never got the chance, unfortunately. That's the way it goes. But my Crassus did really great. My Krieg did phenomenal in this game. In fact, the Krieg especially, because when they get injured, they shoot better. And so I was able to really punish Matt for getting near the Krieg, and that was really good as we kind of fought over that middle area of the table there. It ended up being that also I took the Tarantula this game, and it didn't get to do anything. I didn't deploy it well. It didn't shoot much, so it had almost no effect. And Matt had this unit in the middle of the table, like right in the center on an objective, and I could not shift that unit. So with their 2-up armor save, and they had a bunch of attached characters to the unit, I just couldn't. I was pouring tons and tons of firepower into them, couldn't get them out. And I knew by late game we didn't go to round 5, or I guess no, we didn't. Yeah, I guess we did. We did go to round 5. We talked through it, I think, a little bit, but there was no way we were going to be able to finish playing through the game in our allotted time. So we talked through it a little bit, and the final score ended up being 50-60. So a really close game, but a loss for the Cadians. It was 60 points to the Votan, 50 to the Cadians. But I had a great game and was so glad to meet Matt and to play with him. So it was a great time. And he gave me this, oh my gosh, the factions this year. So let me talk about this just real quick before I go on to game 4, which is also a very special game for me. Everyone this year brought a lot of stuff to hand out. I did my typical thing where I just gave a dice to one of my opponents. So everybody I play against gets a Cade Sergeant Steel die, and it's just like a thank you for being a great opponent. And so I bring extras to every event and I hand them out. But Matt gave me this really cool dice holder that looked like a canister, a Votan canister, had their like little bearded logo on it and stuff, or Axe logo on it. And he even asked, he's like, do you collect small or big dice? And I'm like, well, the big dice. And so it gives me one. And now I'm using that to hold all my collected big dice that I get from my opponents, which is really cool. And a lot of the Votan players were actually, they were actively trading. And that was actually part of their narrative mission as well. They came to do it as players. And then the interlopers were told to do that. And then our rogue trader told us to be trading with the Votan later on, to make an alliance with them, to work with them so that we could defeat chaos. And so we did. And that'll actually come up in a later game. And I'll get more to that in a moment. But that was really cool to show how, like, even like at the regular interaction level, everybody was so into the event and playing it. Everyone was also giving out patches for their alliance. And so I got a really cool patch Sarah made for our whole team. And I'm very excited about that. That's the player with the amazing red Cadian army, and made patches for everybody. And so I'll have to get a jacket or something so I can put all those patches on it. So because they were just too cool, and I'm very proud to have been part of that team. It was absolutely amazing. So game 4. Game 4 is very special for a couple reasons. One, I was up against another beautiful army. I love when I play beautiful armies. And I was up against Van. And so let me flip to the page here so I can remember the scores and stuff. I was up against Van, and Van's gorgeous Tau army. I mean, absolutely beautiful. I love the paint job. Very classic kind of gray or white Tau. And just, and I took one of the best photos I took of the whole event, Van's Ghost Keel up against some industrial ruins. So we're on another industrial planet, and they brought back the red sand and glitter. Zach, if you're watching this video, yes, you didn't bring back glitter, magnetic sand, but you did bring back sand, and I'm still frustrated and disappointed with that. So the whole table was covered in red sand and on this red terrain with these red mats, but it was very thematic and very cool. At least it didn't stick as bad as last year. Last year they had magnetic sand and glitter on the table, and that was awful because so many of us had magnetized armies. So I'm up against Van, his beautiful Tau army, and this mission was wild. So this is the Light the Beacons mission. And so we were told that communication had gone down system-wide for all 3 alliances. And so we had to get our communications beacons back up. And the way this mission worked, there were no deployment zones. Okay, no deployment zones. So you just set a unit down, and then that's it. You just set a unit down, and then your opponent sets a unit down, and wherever you set them. And the only the condition around that was that if you sat down a unit within 9 inches of an opponent's unit, then you had to roll to take mortal wounds during deployment. And that, so that was your deterrence to not like putting yourselves immediately in melee, potentially. I got first drop. And so I take my Crassus, loaded full of infantry, and I basically just slam it down the middle of the table and create this instant bubble of, well, the Tau probably don't want to get close to this Crassus, loaded full of Krieg and Cadians and Ogrins. They don't want to touch that. So I drop down the middle, and then I start triangulating units around it to create this kind of bubble that would deter Van from being anywhere near me. And what I wanted to do was just capture the middle, because that's where I needed to place objectives to score in the game. So I immediately triangulated out, and I started darting them out, and I compressed Van deep onto his side of the table. Very mean thing for me to do, to be honest. But I wanted to, make him find it. I wanted to see if he was going to gamble with that 9-inch deployment rule, and he chose not to. I almost did also. I almost just deployed, I think, a Scout Sentinel or an infantry unit or something right up against his stealth suits, just to threaten those very early game. But I was really nervous because we're both shooting armies, and I was really nervous about exposing myself that way and leaving my units hanging out in the open. So I chose not to in the end. So we deploy. We get our units down on the table, and then I got first turn, and I immediately jump out, and I start creating objectives. I had to make the objectives, and then he also had to make objectives, but I had to make them in the middle. He had to make them on the perimeter. So I just start rapidly getting my infantry in there and just dropping objective after objective. I had to keep my objectives, I think, 9 inches apart or 6 inches apart with this mission. And so with that, I just started scattering them around, and I already like pre-measured out a pattern so I could drop as many as I could on my side, my half of the table, and hopefully be able to hold those all game to score. And so we dive into it very quickly, and he had a lot of very deadly firepower. I threw my armored sentinels to the left flank. My field orange spatters are actually out in the open to bait him a little bit and to get him to come at the armored sentinels, which I knew could either tie something up or kill something. And the Krieg jumped out over there too to drop and hold an objective, and they're so resilient that was easy for them to do. I had my big 29-man unit of Cadians with my warlord, regimental attaches, and everything in the middle of the table. It dropped an objective there, and then they dropped an objective in front of them on the next turn, so they were just like feeding objectives into the middle of the table and holding those as well. My Rogel Dorn went to the right flank and to try to take out like the broadside and the crisis suits, and I think probably one of the detriments to Van during this game was that the Rogel Dorn ended up being extremely effective, and his crisis suits were almost completely ineffective. I don't know what happened. It was just the strangest thing ever. I've never seen crisis suits whiff so much. I guess it's just a dice game, right? But I'm normally up against, Jeremy Slider on Slider Games and doing battle reports with him, and his crisis suits come in, and I just start sweating, right? Just out of fear, and that didn't happen here. And instead, I kind of took out his crisis suits. But so Van and I are talking, and he asked me, he's like, "Hey, you know my brother?" And I just stare at him and I'm like, "Oh, maybe." I'm very bad with names, by the way. And so he tells me his brother's name, which and shame on me. I'm pretty sure it's Dan. It's Dan. I'm bad with names. Forgive me if I got that wrong. And I just look at him and I go, "No, I don't think I do." And Van looked at me with so much disappointment while we were playing our game, and I said that. And he's just like, "Oh, well, I thought you did, right?" I was just like, that seemed, and I processed it for a moment, and I was like, that seemed like kind of a big, like he was definitely expecting me to know his brother. And then, so we're playing our game, and we get to like battle round, I think like 3 or 4 or something. And this guy I know walks up, and it's his brother. And he goes by, and because I know everybody by their online names, and it's Kazarkin Reverend. And I was blown away, which we'd already said hi to each other earlier in the event. And I was like, "Oh, holy cow, I'm playing against your brother and his beautiful army." And then he's hanging out, he's watching the game, and really phenomenal hobbyist as well. So 2 brothers who are both really great at painting and building models, and great sports too. Just such nice guys. And so then it was a really special game for me because I got to play against his brother and chat with him a little more and hang out. And that was just super cool. So I was so excited to do that. But speaking of which, simultaneously, like I said, I was there for the socializing. Next door to us was Slam Sector with his beautiful renegade guard army, just absolutely amazing. So I was also super excited to be like watching his games. I was teasing him the whole time and yelling things at Slam Sector while I was playing against Van in our game and having a great time doing that. So overall, really great. But how this game goes is, unfortunately, I was able to just set up so many objectives and screen out the middle so well that I ran away on points. I really did. So I had no points cap, and he had a points cap every turn. And I guess they kind of expected players to challenge each other more on that middle. And Van and I just didn't do that. And I did. I just ran away with it. So when the game ended, it wasn't that bad, but we didn't make it all the way to turn 5. But it was 35 points to 20 points at the end of round 3, and that's where we called it. And Van was a great sport about it. It's my first win for the event, so I had a loss, a tie, another loss, and then I won a game. So I'm now 1, 1, and 2 for the event, which I think is really good. And my all-comers list performed very well on this game because I had so much flexibility tactically to move in and around stuff. So it was a beautiful game as well. Like, wow, did I love photographing this game. and showing off. So in the photos here, you're going to see Van's army too. And so he just had a gorgeous army and was a great sport about it. Also loved, he had this t-shirt on, this Tau, like Tau Warrior t-shirt. It was really cool and really appreciated that as well. So we got a photo together after our game with his outfit. So that's the end of day 2. We do another briefing and get updated. And what we're all trying to do, to summarize the story by this point, is we're all gaining relics to kind of open up these various containers that have other relics inside of them. And hopefully the goal is that these things will help us win the war. So the Rogue Trader for the Imperium is trying to open up a chest that's been locked by the orcs, right? So it was an Imperial chest. Somebody opened it. You can see the Imperial seals were broken, but then the orcs locked it right back up, and they were like, no, nobody used this. The orcs were trying to unlock the potential of their power source in the super weapon they had, and they had a kill sphere that they were flying through the galaxy with in the subsector, and so they had this relic. They were trying to untap its power, and it was probably going to make them unlimitedly strong, right? And just overwhelm the great gun and the whole system and take it over and be able to loot whatever they wanted. And then the Chaos side was trying to open up a shrine that had a sword in it. And the sword would help them win the war as well. So we're all working towards that. We're gathering it up. And it was really great kind of narrative that they played on. And I think it was after game 3, before game 4, that the Rogue Trader got onto us. Because I guess Imperium was performing terribly. So we got chewed out, right? I've been chewed out before, so didn't mind. We were told we had to make sure we were reading our missions and we understood our orders and we were playing to the missions and to the orders and getting stuff done. And then we did, and we did really well. So then we got some kudos in the evening for performing better, and we got more relics, and we were able to start to unlock our chests and so forth. And it was a lot of fun. There was also this interesting moment in this part of the story where Zoggett, so the Grot helper for the Psychomech, begins to kind of get nervous about powering up this weapon, and even like hides one of the keys from the Psychomech. And so it was like an interesting part where he was worried that this would kind of be maybe the falling of the Wog that they're in the kill sphere that they're flying through the galaxy with. And so it was kind of a neat story update. Really enjoyed it. A lot of fun. Next day, final day. I'm exhausted by this point, by the way. Being in that cosplay, you sweat a lot. So I'm dehydrated. I've not been sleeping very well because I've been prioritizing socializing or just not being able to sleep well in general. I was sharing a bed with Jerry, and he was such a courteous bedmate and didn't steal my blankets this time like he did at Adepticon. But I'm tired. But then beginning of the day, I do get a few more photos with some friends. I got a photo with Kevin and his phenomenal cosplay, and then a few others as well. And we kind of get in there and we start on our mission. And I was up against Tau again. Now, I was up against Jacob and his Tau army. And I think this was the first set of games Jacob had played with his Tau in years. He had a really great, well-rounded list, the same as Van had. And so we go up against each other, and the mission we have is Frontline Withdrawal, I think is what it was called. My handwriting's terrible here. So anyways, I had to capture and destroy objectives and try to get into my deployment zone and stay there. And that's how you scored. But the objectives were already preset from the beacons mission. So we were destroying the beacons basically that we had set up in the previous games. We're on a different planet. So we're on a snow planet now, and we're duking it out. And this is when the Rogue Trader comes in, and she walks into the room and she's like, soldiers, you need to be bartering deals with the interlopers, with the Votan. And so make an alliance with them for this war, trade with them, and secure their friendship, essentially. Okay. So this was a lot of fun for Jacob and I, because I did what any Astromold Terran player would do. And I send our invitation the way we do. So Jacob goes first. He goes, okay, well, I invite you to join the greater good. And if you join the greater good, then we won't harm you. And we'll both just sit back. We'll score our stuff. And it'll all be dandy. And it'll all happen. And I said, well, I hear your message, and I'm going to send you a welcoming from the Emperor, which is artillery fire. Then, after you've witnessed the wrath of the Emperor, we may come to a truce. I won't join your alliance, but we can come to a truce together." And Jacob laughed, and so we didn't come to an agreement, and then we duked it out turn one and just started just blasting each other off the table. And then so turn two comes around, and I'm like, "So, now that you've seen the Emperor's fury, do you want to do a truce?" And he goes, "No, I want to fight on. Since you won't join the greater good, I'll annihilate you." And we were having such a great time with it. Now, surprisingly, in the room with us on our same deployment, a lot of our teammates just brokered deals and they ended their games. I think because it was the third day and a lot of folks were tired that morning. We started a little earlier than we normally did. So folks did. They brokered a deal and they made draws and they walked out of the room. And so Jacob and I, in addition to our kill team players, which my teammate Andre, shout out to him, was in the room with me. And he's having a phenomenal game. And he played through the whole thing and he was having a blast. And Andre had a phenomenal Rogue Trader cosplay on as well. And so we're still in the room, and I think everybody else had left by the time like our turn 2 or 3 came around. And so Jacob and I are duking out. By the time we get to the beginning of turn 3, we both look at each other and we're thinking about it, because now we're losing units. Like, there was no cover in the middle of the table. So we had these 2 deployment zones and we had to go forward, and there was nowhere for us to hide. So we're both like really starting to lose some units. And at this point, we do broker a deal. And because what I had done, I got my Rogodor very quickly by turn 3 into his backfield. And I said, all right, you have one of two choices. You either make an alliance with me and we decide to try to score in a way that it comes out to a draw, or my Rogodor will continue to go through your backfield and blow up all your objectives. And he thought about it, and he had the same threat to me. He could destroy mine too. So I think he still had his Riptide, and he had several other big units that he could threaten objectives with. I did take out his Crisis Suits as well. But it was a little tougher. I took out his Ghost Kill early on too. So he had taken some hits, and he was thinking about it. He was like, all right, we can broker a truce. And we did. And we kept playing our game, though. We didn't stop playing. We maneuvered our units in a way to score. We were planking shots at each other, but we weren't like taking each other off of objectives. We were just having fun, killing a unit here and there that wouldn't impact the end of the game, and had an absolute blast with it. So this game ends, and this is the wildest score I get the whole time. 135 points to 135 points as a draw. So we were able to come to a draw as we were duking it out and fighting through in our truce. And so I was able to report that into our Vox Localum that we did, in fact, do a truce and had worked it out together. I really like the color scheme also of Jacob's army. I just want to compliment that real quick. It had this cool like blue and orange and these lava themed bases. Very cool army, and it was really great on our Ice Planet world still. So we had a great time with that. So I want to, before I go into game 6, I want to mention something real quick that was happening to me during the event. So some of the Vox Localums, some of the staff know me, and it's because I come to Nova, and it's my second grand narrative at this point. And so, you know, they were talking to me a little bit in character, out of character, and but in particular, new friend who goes by Rachel Paints, phenomenal hobbyist, absolutely super talented, and does commission work. So please go check out Rachel Paint. So this person was one of the Vox Localums for the Chaos side. And knowing me and my loyalty to the Imperium, they were tempting me to fall to Chaos, to join Chaos. I mean, the whole time. In fact, in the prior game where I was up against Jacob and Tao, I had even like hung this necklace over me. And I was so exhausted, so dehydrated, I didn't know what was going on. And I'm like, oh no, this is a potion of like Nurgle's Rot. And I instantly like gave it away to the guy who was cosplaying Be'lakor for the event. Also phenomenal. And but the whole time, Rachel Paints is trying to get me to fall to Chaos, and is even telling the other Vox Localums that they're attempting to get me to fall to Chaos, and they're getting in on it too. And during Game 5, it was like laying it on thick. Even came in and I had made the statement that as long as the Imperium has recaf, I will always fight for the Imperium. So they come in their cosplay outfit, phenomenal cosplay, right? Silver shoulder pauldrons with skulls and this black kind of feathery outfit. And comes in and says, here, I brought you coffee. And it's got a chaos symbol on the bottom and things like that. And it's like, so will you fall to chaos now? And I'm like, no. And I'm so tired, I could barely role play through it. And so I finally pick up the cup and I'm trying to like figure out what's going on. Like, what is this? Is it actually coffee, or is this also kind of fun part of the prank? And so I sniff it. It doesn't smell like anything. And I'm like, what is going on? And I look at it because then I'm like, oh, is this vodka? Right? Swing something that I was gonna regret. So I look at it and I'm trying to figure out what it is. And finally I discern I don't drink it because I'm a loyal servant to the emperor. And I go, this is just water. So she takes the lid off. She looks down at it. So she had been deceived by another one of the NPCs for the event. And I was just dying laughing. It was and these were the kind of fun narrative moments we were having during and in between games. It's the most immersive event you can go to. It was so fantastic. And I loved the play with it that way, where we were in character and we were talking about stuff in the world. So she storms out of the room, in character, because she's been deceived. And but in between games 5 and 6, she finds me, and we are having a conversation about some stuff. And then she's like, you know what? You've been a great sport. And because she was heckling me the whole event, she goes, you've been a great sport. I just want to give you something. Like, sincerely, I want to give you a gift to thank you for being such a great sport for this whole thing and role-playing with me and creating these awesome moments. And hands me a box of Imperial Agents dice. Fun fact about me, I'm very much like it's a little things kind of person. And so that gift, that 12 dice in the box, meant a lot. Those little things always mean a lot to me. I'm going to value every little gift I got from the event, but especially that one. I was very excited about it. I was just floored. I was very thankful for that. So I go on. We get our briefing, and then because this was before the semifinal briefing, and so at this point the story kind of develops, and everybody opens up their shrines or their chests and everything. So the Imperium, the Rogue Trader, opens it up, and she's been deceived. It's not what she thought it was. And so she's devastated by what she has found, and it ended up being a Necron artifact. And then the orcs do their stuff, and it works. It gives them like more power for the kill sphere, and so they were even more threatening and menacing. And at this point, the orcs are unstoppable. The Psychomech is going. But during this final briefing, when they get the machine working, Zoggett is electrocuted to death. And so Zoggett dies, and they chuck his skeleton into the middle of the room, his bloody, burnt skeleton. And once again, one of the coolest things about the grand narrative is the players built a shrine to Zoggett at his skeleton and set down tokens and little memorabilia to honor Zoggett and his loyal service to the Psychomech and the Interloper Alliance. And it's probably the greatest moment of the grand narrative. Honestly, and it blew the staff away running the event and so forth. It was just really cool. Then the Chaos Forces open up their relic, and they get the giant sword out, right? And so now they have a lot more power than they did before, and it's going to help them to achieve their goals. And so it looks like everything's on a knife edge, right? The Imperium's winning in terms of like points, planetary battlefield control, and things like that. But we've discovered that our relic is not what we thought it to be. And the Rogue Trader is having this internal conflict of whether or not to wield a Necron weapon, right? Because is that going to make them an extremist and a heretic to do that, to be able to win the war and to protect the great gun? Because if we lose the great gun, we lose the system. So it's a very tense moment. And so what's going to happen? And I'm really unsure too. I mean, some stuff you can kind of predict as it goes along. But this moment, it was really interesting in the lore, and they crafted a great story, and I just wasn't sure what was going to happen. So really tense, really deep into it, and then I go to my game 6. My game 6 is against Fish. Michael is his real first name, but I'm up against Fish, and Fish has been literally like heckling me also since before registration even opened. He was going to fight me and he was going to take down my Cadians. He was familiar with my YouTube channel and my content. And so Fish is like, yeah, I'm going to get you. And surely enough, game 6, the final round, I get paired up against Fish. And we are there at the table and it's so exciting. Fish had a Black Legion army and I had my Cadians. So now it's Cadians versus Black Legion in the final game of the grand narrative. It could not have been more perfect. So I'm very excited. And we sit down, we go to play our game. And I'm like, you know what? I just got these new special dice. I had them in my pocket. So remember I was telling you about, I got those Imperial Agents dice. So I pull the box out. And I'm like, I'm going to use these dice for all my special rolls while we take you down in the name of the Emperor. And I open up the dice and I pour them out. So GW packaging has a little opening on it. You can see the actual dice. The 4 I could see were all the Imperial Agents dice that were in the box. The other, I think 12 dice, were all Black Legion dice. So here I am talking a big game against Fish and his Black Legion army. And I'm going to use my Imperial Agents dice, and I open up the box and I dump it out, and I'd been deceived, and I'd been tricked, and I'd been fooled by chaos, and I dump out a bunch of Black Legion dice all over the table, and we had such a good laugh. The whole room had such a good laugh, and I start in character, yelling, "Witch, you traitor, you liar, you deceiver." It was so wonderful, and once again, what a great narrative moment where I thought I had the upper hand because of this special gift I had been given, like a relic almost. And then I didn't. I didn't, and I was tricked, and I'm up against chaos, and I felt like I was back on Cadia all over again, right? Just, oh my God, is the grand narrative such a great event. So we start game 6, and it is Terminus Offensive. And it's my Cadians up against his Black Legion. And the game was really, really tight. We had this very tough table, not a whole lot of line of sight blocking, mostly barricades in the middle. And I got first turn. So I brought my list with the Lightning and the Thunderbolt and the Armored Sentinels in this one. And I charged the middle very early game. But I feed a few units in, like a Scout Sentinel and stuff, to let him get in there and charge and fight it, but nothing. And I kept my other units back a little bit. So if he did get into like the Scout Sentinels and stuff, I could then, if that unit dies or they fall back, I could shoot and maybe take out that unit. My shooting is awful turn 1. I mean, I just absolutely whiff. And Fish was nervous. He thought I was going to shoot him off the table turn 1. As soon as we did list selection, he was not feeling very confident about his choices and that I had brought a much tougher list than he was anticipating. And I whiff all my shooting. And then he goes to counter me his turn 1. He kind of whiffs most of his too. And then we're like, oh my God, what's going to happen in this game? Then turn 2, I go to shoot again. And I finally start plinking away a couple units. But we are using the Crusade rules, and Fish has so many really good Crusade upgrades, especially on his Chaos Champions unit. I'm not able to shift them. I'm not able to take them out. They had Feel No Pains. They had invulnerable saves. They had increased toughness or wounds. I mean, it was just damage reduction. That's what it was. They reduced damage by 1. Oh, it was wild. So everything I tried to take out that unit, I just couldn't do it. And then I completely whiffed on doing anything against his. He had the Possessed over on the left flank. And big, huge blob that he was going to charge with. I didn't hurt him. I may have killed like 3 models the whole game. Couldn't hurt his Forged Fiend. I couldn't hurt his the only thing I really killed early in the game was a Rhino. But then if the game continues on and Fish is feeling a little better about the game, I'm a little nervous. I'm getting a little anxious. The score is kind of tight. I score well turn 2. He scores okay turn 2. It's 15-10 then. And then we flip, and I score 10 points turn 3, and he scores 15 points turn 3. So in the turn 3, we're tied. So talk about a tight game, right? And neither of us are feeling confident about it at this point. We're like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Then I was able to counterpunch really well because it wasn't going good for me early game, besides the scoring. And he dropped down his deep strike units, which were Raptors and so forth. And I was able to shoot those kind of jump pack melee infantry off the table. Just absolutely devastate them off the table with Krieg and Cadians and take aim order. And they had emergency disembarked out of the Crassus. So I put all the mortal wounds, all the killed models on the Krieg, so they were automatically shooting better. So they were hitting on 2s. They got first ring fire, second ring fire. So the tons of plasma shots, right, going in and so forth. I was getting all kinds of lethal hits with our detachment ability, and I just wasted that unit into nothing. But he was doing the same to me, like in the middle of the table, and my whole left flank just collapsed. Those possessed came in. They hit my armored sentinels, blocks of infantry, artillery, scout sentinel from strategic reserves, and he ate through it all. And there was nothing I could do to stop him on the left flank. So we're going back and forth on this icy planet across these industrial ruins, and we're just having one heck of a match for the middle of the table. And we get down, I kid you not, the game was decided in turn 5. So Fish and I, we play all the way to the end. I think he was still convinced going, in turn 4 that he was going to lose the game. And in turn 5, we had figured out that there was no way I could win because of the way I'd moved on objectives and this and that, and the way he held them and the way he was able to control the center. There was just no way for me out of it. I had nearly shifted him off his own backfield objectives, but then he was able to counter with a 5-man unit. I think Raptors that dropped in. I'm not as familiar with some of the Chaos unit names, but he dropped those in. Was able to recapture an objective I had basically shot him off of with artillery and the heavy flamer from a sentinel, and he recaptured it, was able to score those points, and then I wasn't able to counter him. And so my final game would end up being a loss to the Black Legion. But I blame Rachel Paints for that. I blame me being weak and being deceived by chaos for the reason that I had lost that game, but also because Fish was just a great opponent and we had such a really phenomenal time. So that's the end of the games that we had. After this, I'd get a few photos with some of the other cosplayers. I'm sorry, I'm not great with names. I'm very sorry about that. But I do get some really awesome action shots with Bellacore, which we were also featured in the YouTube short video that GW themselves put together to kind of promote the event while we were there. That was really cool. We're kind of blurry though. We're out of focus a little bit, but we're in there. And then, so we get photos together, also get photos with a kind of cool rogue trader, a Chaos cosplayer who was there. Oh gosh, I feel so bad I forget names. I'm really bad about this. I'm sorry, guys. Like, you all are awesome. I will always remember your faces. That's what I'm good at. But absolutely phenomenal. And so we had a great time doing that. And then when the event ended, I was also able to get photos with all the phenomenal folks who were the staff and the Voxel Callum and Lords of War for the event, including my friend Lydia, who was the rogue trader, and also Rachel Paints, who was the Chaos cosplayer, so shown here. And Fish and I got a photo together when the event ended because we didn't get one at the end of our game. Shame on me. But then we got one together, and which was really awesome. There was other kind of cosplayers I got photos with. I wasn't sure of everyone's name, but it was a really great time to do that, and we had a lot of fun. So overall, that means I had 1 win, I had 2 ties, and 3 losses. I think it's pretty average because if you look at the ties as kind of like a half win in a way, then that's not bad. I actually did very middle of the road, and that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to bring a list where I devastated my opponents. I wanted to bring a list where we could have fun. And I had fun, and they had fun. So my list accomplished what I wanted to do. I got to play with cool models and cool missions and awesome games, meet people, make new friends, and just have an overall wonderful time. And I got to do that. Were my aircraft super effective? No. Were they terrible? No. They were very middle of the road. And as you can see by the 2 ties, which one was negotiated, but I could have won 3 and lost 3, which would have been a perfectly average. I mean, had just 1 or 2 points gone differently, or had I played a little differently, then, you know, that could have gone a lot differently. But I had a lot of fun. It was a really phenomenal time. So overall, it was just a fantastic event. And to each of you who were at the event and watching this video, thank you so much for coming up and talking to me. And thank you so much for just chatting hobby with me and cosplay and inspiration and so forth. I really appreciate it. Everyone I got a photo with, please never hesitate to come up to me again, or folks who maybe were too nervous to. I'm always here to be part of the community and to talk with you all and to just spread joy and to do stuff together. And it's exactly what I did. So it was one of the greatest events I've ever been to. So the only thing that compares to it for me is the Nova narrative run by Chris Stover and the phenomenal crew down there. And this is the only thing that comes even close to that as well. And I think they're on par with each other for different reasons, though. And I'll talk about, I haven't done my Nova recap for 2024 yet. I'm going to do that in another video before Christmas. So you all will hear about both events from my perspective there and how they're different as well. And I specifically wanted to do Nova after I did the grand narrative in terms of video review, because I wanted to have that information about the grand narrative fresh and to do those comparisons pretty strongly together. So this way you could decide for yourself what you think is best for you and what style of play you want to do, or do both. I mean, oh darn, I'll always be at both. As long as I can get the time off and I can be there, I will always do both. And I really appreciate it as well. So overall, I think the grand narrative is definitely one of the greatest events ever. And if you are interested in storytelling and Warhammer 40,000, you should go. Even if you're not going to cosplay, even if you're not going to role play, the storytelling part is phenomenal. And everything we just did in our games and everything that happened, which, by the way, if you notice, I didn't tell you how it ended. You can go to the website, you can read about it, or I'm sure they'll be publishing this into, game supplement or narrative books. So you'll be able to read about it more later on. But we had a really cool ending, and just huge shout out to the Lords of War and their phenomenal acting skills. I swear, Liddy, who played the Rogue Trader, I asked her afterwards if she had theater experience, because just so good. Really sold the performance, and it was absolutely phenomenal. And same to the other folks there too, who were doing their characters. So Ben, who's playing the Chaos character, and Chris playing the Psychomech, they did really phenomenal. But if you're interested in storytelling and Warhammer 40,000, this is the event to go to. This is the event to participate in. If you want to do cosplay, even better. And I'll talk more in a separate video about cosplaying. I don't know when that'll be out, but I will be recording it and talking about it. Because cosplay at events is something that I think needs to be talked about. And I appreciate all of you who told me you were inspired to make cosplays and come. I got a great photo with a couple of folks at the end in their Astral Terran cosplays and throughout the event. But and then they were like, oh, this is not what I was expecting when wearing a cosplay. And it isn't. It is. It's tough. This is the event to go to. And it's a lot of fun. You play 6 games, and it's really good. You can also do Kill Team. You don't have to do Warhammer 40K. So I'm really glad to see them supporting the multiple game types. The only thing that I would ask is please support boarding actions. Games Workshop, do boarding actions events. Pay me. I'll come run them. I'm telling you right now, they'll be a hit, and you'll sell more kits. Folks will love it. I love boarding actions. And when I run events locally, my players have loved boarding actions. I'll be running boarding actions at Adepticon as well. And I'm telling you, people just need to dip their toes into it, and they're going to love it. So that's another thing. So definitely check out the Grand Narrative. Definitely check out this event if you are interested in this. So I can't recommend it enough. And that's what I would recommend. If you're going to come to it and you're wondering what to bring, think about how I wrote my list. And think about how, and you can go watch that list review in the comment descriptions down below. You can click on that link and go watch that list review. Bring a well-rounded list and bring something where you're not going to stomp your opponent. You're not going to lay down and let them roll over you either. You're going to have a good time. Your opponent's going to have a good time. And that's what you should be aiming for at events like this. And that's definitely what I got out of it. In every game, especially like, I think three of the most balanced lists I played against were Fish, Van, and Jacob. And that's nothing against my other opponents. They had great lists too. No, you know what? I mean, my first round opponent, pretty phenomenal list as well with the Necron army. So 4 out of 6, super well-rounded, balanced lists. My game 2 was up against all those big, huge monsters, so that was tough. And the all-infantry Votan list was way tougher than I was expecting. The other thing about Votan, nothing in their army is bad. So Matt couldn't, even if he brought vehicles or something, it wouldn't have changed the power level of his list. The army's just good. And that's all right. They're not so good that they're like running away at tournaments. They're just good. They don't have bad units, so everything he takes is great. You know, I definitely learned that. So definitely check it out. So I'll be posting more narrative, more Crusade content here on my channel if you're interested in that. So keep an eye out for those videos and battle reports and reviews. I'll be doing that here. As GW releases new Crusade supplements, I'll continue to talk about those as well and how I approach narrative play in Warhammer 40,000. So that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed the recap of the event and all the cool photos and videos I got to share of it. I appreciate each and every one of you watching this video. If you want to support the channel, please like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. And also comment down below if you were at the event and we got to meet. And so just comment and let me know. Share photos. You can tag me on Instagram, or you can share photos here, maybe on social media otherwise. And I'd really love to see or hear about your experiences too. I had a great time, and it was wonderful meeting you all as well. So as always, have fun wargaming. And remember, Cadia stands.